It's Alex, the Bookubus. Welcome to my library. Hello, it's Alex, the Bookubus. I am finally bringing you part 2 of my library tour. I was hoping to do this about a month ago, but then I got ill and then various life things got in the way. But hopefully better late than never. And of course I decided to start off with my mass market paperbacks, and I'll go through these 3 shelves today. We can take a look at all of the wonderful book covers. Most of these are horror, but there are some other things in there too. Some thrillers, sci-fi, fantasy, gothic romance, etc. And most of these are vintage editions, but yeah, there's probably a few more recent ones in there as well. And I'm not going to talk a ton about each book, but if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the comments. First off, we have Black Christmas by Thomas Altman. Not related to the film of the same name, but yeah, this is a really good horror/thriller. Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. This is a UK edition. The books were published under the name Virginia Andrews there. And I just read this for the first time recently and loved it. My Sweet Audrina by V.C. Andrews. And this one has some really lovely step back art. The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson. And yes, I keep this in my fiction section. 666 by Jay Anson. Another great cover and more really amazing step back art. Firefly by Piers Anthony. Grave Markings by Michael A. Armson. This is one of the Del Abyss books, and I'm actually hoping to pick this one up soon. It looks really good. The Witches of Brimstone Hill by Helen Arvonen. Morning Star by Peter Atkins. Naomi's Room by Jonathan Aycliffe. I really enjoyed this one. Whispers in the Dark by Jonathan Aycliffe. Demon's Fright by Penelope Banker Kreps. A really wonderful cover, and yeah, all of this is embossed. It's pretty wonderful. The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks, and this is the copy that I bought as a teenager and I've kept hold of it all these years. Blood and Chrysanthemums by Nancy Baker. Next up are a few Clive Barker books. We've got Books of Blood Volume 1, Books of Blood Volume 2, Books of Blood Volume 3, The Inhuman Condition, which is Volume 4, In the Flesh, which is Volume 5, and last up for the Clive Barker paperbacks is Sacrament. Second Sight by Cecilia Bartholomew. Great name and great cover. The Attraction by B.W. Batin. Mary Mary by B.W. Batin. The Taking by Donald Beeman. Sleep by Lynn Biederstadt. Chamber of Horrors by Robert Bloch. The Cunning by Robert Bloch. And Laurie by Robert Bloch. XY by Michael Blumlein. Mr. Hands by Gary A. Brownbeck. Moving position slightly. Crossbearers by Mark Brellan. Lost Souls by Poppy Z. Bright. Wormwood by Poppy Z. Bright. The Gatherer by Owen Brooks. The Voice of the Clown by Brenda Brown Canary. The Pix by John Buell. I really love this cover. Blood Moon by Mason Burgess. Child of Demons by Mason Burgess. Fear Book by John L. Byrne, which has a pretty cool cover, and sorry about the glare, but very cool artwork inside. Next up are several Ramsey Campbell books. This one is Ancient Images, which also has some really amazing step-back art. Creepy. Cold Print. The Count of 11. The Face That Must Die. The Hungry Moon. Midnight Sun. The Nameless. I mean, just look at that typography. Amazing. Night of the Claw. And last up for the Ramsey Campbell ones is Obsession. Lost Boys by Orson Scott Card, which has some slightly creepy step-back art. Last up for this shelf is Mystery of the Witch's Bridge by Barbie Oliver Carlton. Okay, moving on to the next shelf, we have Evil is a Quiet Word by Theodus Carroll. That's the inside. Previously owned by Heather McCaskill, apparently. Wolf Tracks by David Case. Evil Reincarnate by Lee Clark. Neverland by Douglas Clegg. Hobgoblin by John Coyne. This one has some pretty badass step-back art. The Hunting Season by John Coyne. And The Legacy by John Coyne. The Hampton Sisters by Bernard F. Connors. This one has some interesting step-back art. Sandman by Linda Crockett. Horror Show by David Dark. Such a wacky cover, I love it. Last Rites by David Dark. Here is the 8-book series The Witches by James Dark. This is book 1, The Prisoner. Book 2, The Trial. Book 3, The Torture. Book 4, The Escape. Book 5, The Meeting. Book 6, The Killing. Book 7, The Feud. And Book 8, The Plague. Next up is Bring on the Night by Jay Davis and Don Davis. It's missing its cover, but we do have the part of the wonderful step-back art. Halo by Chet Day. Amazing cover. The Wanting Factor by Jean DeWeese. The Blue Lenses and Other Stories by Daphne du Maurier. The House on the Strand by Daphne du Maurier. And Kiss Me Again, Stranger by Daphne du Maurier. The Crawling Dark by Pauline Dunn. This is one they ripped off from a Dean Koontz novel. Funnily enough, sitting on my shelf next to a Dean Koontz novel. This is one of his many pen names, Deanna Dwyer, and this is Dance with the Devil. The Reincarnation of Peter Proud by Max Ehrlich. Black Ambrosia by Elizabeth Engstrom. This is a really excellent and unique vampire novel. The Neighbourhood by S.K. Epperson. Shadow Man by Dennis Etchison, with an interesting cover design and artwork inside. Dark Scope by Margaret Falk. Next up are a few John Farris books. This one is Fiends, with some step back art. Minotaur. Son of the Endless Night, which has some of my favourite step back art. Absolutely amazing. And last up for John Farris is When Michael Calls. Okay, changing position slightly, we have The Talisman, which is book 2 in the Night Hunter series by Robert Falcon. What a cover. Fairy Tale by Raymond E. Feist. Deadly Friend by Keith Ferrario. Children of Darkness by Andrew Fisher and K.S. Salakoff. Dark Dreaming by Pat Franklin. The Book of the Damned by D.A. Fowler. And What's Wrong with Valerie by D.A. Fowler. I've loved everything I've read by her so far, including these two. They are both fantastic. The Forsaken by Stephen Ray Fulgham. Follower by Stephen Gallagher. Live Girls by Ray Garton. Fear by R. Patrick Gates. Tunnel Vision by R. Patrick Gates. Bloody Valentine by Stephen R. George. The Forgotten by Stephen R. George. Greeley's Cove by John Gideon. The Birds and the Bees by Sephora Giron. Crota by Owl Going Back. And Evil Whispers by Owl Going Back. And moving on to shelf 3, which is the last shelf we're going to be looking at today. This is Survivor by J.F. Gonzalez. And moving from extreme horror to quiet horror, we have The Hour of the Ox Run Dead by Charles L. Grant. Love this cover. It's very atmospheric. And The Nestling by Charles L. Grant. Sweet Blood by Pat Graverson. I love that one of the O's is a moon. Brilliant. Childgrave by Ken Greenhall. Death Chain by Ken Greenhall. The Cormorant by Stephen Gregory. Rockabye Baby by Stephen Gresham. Castle of Fear by Priscilla Hagen. Madness by Catherine Hale. This Dark Paradise by Wendy Haley. with some kind of V.C. Andrews style step back art. Elizabeth by Jessica Hamilton, which is actually a pen name for Ken Greenhall, who we just saw a couple of other books by. Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. And The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris. Edge of Terror by Michael Hammonds. Ghostlight by Rick Hartala. Nightstone by Rick Hartala, which has a pretty cool holographic bit on the cover. Twilight Time by Rick Hartala. And one more Rick Hartala, Winter Wake. The Devouring by Douglas D. Hawke. The Torching by Nancy Heidish. Friend by Diana Henstall. Next we have a handful of James Herbert books. First up is The Dark, The Fog, Haunted, The Jonah, Moon, Others, The Rats, Sepulchre, which looks like it might have step back art, but it doesn't. And last up for James Herbert is Shrine. Moving over slightly, here is Pranks by Dennis J. Higman. Dawn of the Vampire by William Hill, which has a metallic cover that's a bit hard to get on camera. And Vampire's Kiss, also by William Hill. Falling Angel by William Hjortsberg. Prototype by Brian Hodge. Carnacki the Ghost Finder by William Hope Hodgson. Lord of the Dead by Tom Holland. Fear by L. Ron Hubbard. Yes, that's L. Ron Hubbard. The Keepsake by Paul Hewson. It's hard to see, but there's like a creepy face embossed in the cover there. Next up are a few Sean Hudson books. This one is Captives, Deadhead, Relics, and another edition of Relics. Styx by Christopher Hyde. We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I love this book and I love this edition, and I found it for 25 cents at a library book sale. It's one of my best ever finds. Okay, and the last two books are by one of my new favourite authors, Charlie Jacob. This one is Haunter, which I haven't read yet, but I am very much looking forward to doing so. And this Symbiotic Fascination, which was my favourite read of last year, and no doubt you have heard me raving about it ever since. It really is amazing though. Okay, so that was part 2 of my library tour, and yeah, I've got another couple of videos to finish off going through my mass market paperbacks, and then yeah, we've still got a bunch more to go after that. So this series is, yeah, hopefully going to be several videos long, but yeah, it took me longer than anticipated to get this part done. but hopefully I can get to the other ones in a bit more of a timely manner. We will see. Anyway, famous last words probably. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, if you have any questions about any of the books, feel free to ask. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye!